The evolution of art in Naruto. This is from 4 years ago. So is this before Boruto even came out then? I actually don't even know. Did I read the entire Naruto manga? I know. I stopped reading Naruto in the war arc, and I watched the anime from the start. Yeah. I know the rest of you guys have even, like, seen Naruto to begin with. I need to finish it at some point. Fair enough. Finish it and then just forget that Boruto ever exists. And just don't worry about it.
Art is one of the many crucial factors.
What a fucking shot, man. I will say, there are definitely shots in the Naruto manga which are fucking gorgeous.
That can make a manga appealing. It's always going to be the first thing your eye gets attracted to on the page, and majority of the time authors know this, and so they take advantage of the potential that could be crafted from such imagery. Rather than just being a bunch of cool looking images thrown onto paper, it becomes something expressive that's filled with heart and soul, making you become even more engrossed and connected to the events that are being played out, as at times just a single image is enough to give you a rush of emotions.
Man, it's been so long since I've read the fucking manga. I know all these shots. I read these parts of the manga fucking years ago.
Any words being needed. This is why I appreciate art
That's
in manga,
another beautiful
as it
shot.
can really enhance the quality of a series dramatically if it's laid out correctly. And I think it's great that there are so many manga out there with vastly different art styles for the world to get immersed into, as you'll rarely run into the exact same art style.
Sadly,
however, part of this logic can be applied to just one series entirely, as the—
If you want to talk about a series whose art style drastically changed, I don't know if it's going to come up. Soul Eater. Soul Eater's art is not even remotely the same. Soul Eater Chapter 1. Yeah, here we go. Soul Eater's art completely shifted after the anime came out, because the anime was so popular. And I don't hate the original Soul Eater art style. I think it looks... It's a little... It's art of its time, absolutely. With like the moe sort of art style, but like you can really see that evolution over time. Then you have Hunter x Hunter, which I would say devolved because of health issues from the author.
Longer author's work continues, you'll start to notice a change in the art style. This can be a good and at times a bad thing. The manga industry is relentlessly demanding, to say the least, especially when it comes to the schedule of releasing a chapter every single week. And so having to keep up with such consistency means adapting to the situation to the best of your capabilities. Drawing a story for so long can end up really benefiting the author when it comes to the art, as they'll constantly be developing themselves on a regular basis. However, for others, this
Kagurabachi is another good example, another recent example. Early Kagurabachi is fine, but everyone kind of had like a fish face. If you've read Kagurabachi, you kind of know what I'm talking about. Kagurabachi. Let's go just chapter 1. Actually, chapter 1's probably not even a great example. You know what? Actually, this... Yeah, there's not a great shot that's immediately coming to mind. But, like, Chihiro's face is very flat. There's just something off about his face compared to the, like, later chapters when the art style is more sort of formulated.
Pace or quality is something that is bound to eventually trickle off. In this video, I want to discuss the artwork in Naruto and the considerable amount of changes it has gone through during its 15-year run. For me, there's 3 main noticeable changes in how Kishimoto has approached his artwork in this period of publication. And so I plan to talk about these changes as well as the pros and cons each style brought to the table. Of course, this is my opinion. Art is always going to be a subjective topic to discuss, so you may disagree with what I think works and what doesn't. And hey, that's fine. The world would be boring if everyone liked the same thing anyway. So with that small notice out of the way, let's dive in and talk about the evolution of art in Naruto. Early Naruto will always carry the most charm in terms of look, and I feel like this sentiment can be carried over to other series, as it's always really fascinating to see just how different each manga looked visually when it began publication compared to what it looks later on.
Well, especially for the artists who are like really fucking new. Like, it's one thing if this is your second or third manga and you've got like an established art style, but when this is your debut manga, there is nobody who gets through like 50 or 100 chapters without their art style very heavily changing. Maybe not being entirely different like Soul Eater, but really changing.
Characters are drawn very loosely, as you'll notice how Kishimoto will sometimes not always connect the line strokes when drawing. While this stylistic choice is always going to
Remember early Fairy Tail was very Oda-like and eventually changed its own identity.
be up for interpretation, I always found
Also, if people are assistants for other manga, oftentimes they will adopt aspects of their style into their own style.
that this decision benefits the artwork heavily, as it's given the drawing room to breathe. It's not always necessary to have every line be connecting, as at times it can give off a rather restricted and stiff look. This technique is especially common the most in the way he draws eyes, as while they're often the most simplest design in this current time period for Kishimoto, he still gives them the necessary space by not having the entire line wrap around.
Eyes are the simplest, and then we eventually get to...
When it comes to expression, it's
Sharingan.
something that should always have the freedom it needs to give off
I think by having the eyes simple, it really does make the Sharingan stand out way more at the time as well.
such clear emotions, and if that becomes restricted, then it's just going to come across as lifeless. And so when comparing what I just said to Kishimoto's style of line separation, I think it makes sense for him to be designing characters this way, as due to the nature of the story with all kinds of different actions taking place, it gives him the freedom to show how acrobatic and free his characters can be. And going back again to the eyes, they're known for being one of the most expressive parts of the human body, and so I think it's a great touch to have majority of the cast keep this as a signature look throughout the entirety of the series, unless if you're Rock Lee. Moving on from the smaller touches, let's talk about some of the most noticeable things of Kishimoto's early art. As mentioned, characters are drawn in simple fashion, making sure not to over detail or complicate anything with...
That was a problem that happened with Cell. Cell was very, very over-designed, and nobody involved in the process of Cell, whether it be the author or the anime staff, wanted to deal with Cell any longer than they had to. Like, when you go from Frieza, who's a very simple design, to Cell, and then back to Boo, and then you go to Boo. There's a reason why Boo is a much simpler design than Cell ever was going to be.
Unnecessary touches. You can see this in the way he draws his shadows, as they're just straight lines that have the same tonal value, meaning the shadow isn't getting darker or lighter, it's all just the same. He also makes sure these shadows aren't used too excessively, though he has shown multiple times he can pull off superb looking artwork that takes full advantage of such excessive use of lines for a more dramatic effect. And I think one of the reasons why the more dramatic looking artwork in Naruto packs such a punch is because of the clean and simple look Kishimoto draws his characters, as stated earlier. Let's look at Haku for example. Here you can get a good grasp of how he draws, as he tends to enjoy sticking to more straighter and blocky designs, such as the strap around his waist as well as the kimono in general, while only using curves when necessary, like for the shoulders and curvature of his fingers. Though if you look at Haku from our perspective, on the left side of his head we can see a straight line traveling up to the top of his scalp, as generally you would think there would be a curve in this section, yet Kishimoto has decided to give it his own special touch to further show off his style of drawing. And while his characters can seem very sharp in design, which matches the type of story he's telling with dangerous ninjas engaging in multiple fights, he still manages to pull off delicate moments when needed, as they carry all the warmth and affection such a moment should be displayed. This blocky and straight way of drawing is something to keep in mind for later, so make sure to keep it in the back of your head for now. But for the final part of this section, I want to briefly discuss Kishimoto's paneling. While I'd say in this time period Kishimoto has a great grasp of staging, I would say his panel layout is by far the least impressive compared to everything else I've mentioned. And that's not to say it's bad, I think he does a really great job in general, especially when it comes to his borderless panels and double page spreads.
That's fucking gorgeous.
Which always looks superb to say the least. I just feel at times Kishimoto could have laid out his panels in more interesting ways.
Well, a problem that a lot of action manga have is trying to keep track of who's doing what. Thankfully, in Naruto, especially early on, a lot of the time it was one person does something, the other person does something. You can typically work it out. But when both characters are moving really fast, trying to know what the fuck is happening can get very, very difficult.
Help assist with
a lot
what's
of
being
series have that
displayed in
problem.
terms of the actions of the characters.
tried Vanilla Rice,
Fortunately,
yeah, shut
he
up.
does evolve out of this later on when his art style develops, so I'll save those examples for later. But as I said, I think how Kishimoto handles his paneling is completely fine. I think it just would have been nice to see more exciting displays filled with energy. It's clear to see he understands what he's drawing, as even for the paneling on this page, while it looks simple enough, there's a really great detail Kishimoto added to further emphasize the powerful smack to the face Keeper gets when getting kicked to the floor, as the bottom line for the top panel isn't completely horizontal, but instead is positioned slightly diagonal to create a disorientating look as your eyes are trying to make you believe the line is completely straight, when in reality it's slightly turned, matching how Keeper must be feeling in terms of being disorientated from such a blow, as this panel is based around the headspace of Keeper. This being reinstated by having the bottom panel be purely a reaction shot of Keeper feeling the effect of the damage he's received. Kishimoto could have just drawn a straight horizontal line for each panel, but this wasn't just a normal panel showcasing an average attack, but a panel that marked a significant change to the fight, that being Keeper's defeat. And while we're on the topic of giving attention to panel layout, Kishimoto has always been really careful at making sure he has enough space for everything, creating great detailed moments such as these 3 panels that show the slow change in Naruto's reaction to realizing Sasuke is alive, not only given some great characterization to Naruto without any proper sentences being formed, but also given the perfect amount of space such a revelation would have on a character to make it all the more emotional, as he could have easily skipped the middle panel entirely, but it wouldn't have delivered the same slow expressive effect, as it's like our shift in emotions is matching with Naruto's as the panels progress. Overall, I think the start of Kishimoto's art venture with Naruto was handled pretty amazingly, as it's always a treat to go back and reread the early volumes of the series, as you can feel the charm and passion of a creator who is having
Early
a blast
Naruto is fun, primarily because it's actually about ninjas. Like, you're not at Chakra Gundams just yet, right? Like, you got a little bit of it towards the end, when you start seeing, like, the Nine Tails Chakra stuff, and then Sasuke using the fucking the seal thingy, but for the most part it's like people like ninja tools actually mattered at this point as well, which made some of the fights a lot more interesting.
What he's doing. While I have a few tiny nitpicks like facial expressions and character movements feeling a bit too stiff at times, it's honestly nothing that major to complain about when
Wooly is
compared to
supposed to feel
everything else
stiff.
that's been offered.
That's kind of
here.
his
I would
deal.
assume the reason for some stiffness here and there, as well as not too many interesting panel layouts being demonstrated, is because
Yeah, but Gaara was one character. And I would say Gamabunta still fit in with, like, that, like, it's like, the idea of a summoning jutsu is still, like, well within the realm of ninjas. Also, he fought, like, you know, with ninja tools as well. I think he had, like, a sword or something. I don't fully remember. It's a long time since I've seen the early Naruto stuff. But what I mean is, like, most of the other fights, right? Like, a kunai actually, like, mattered. Like, were they even used in the latter half of Shippuden?
there was a time where Kishimoto actually stopped drawing in his early years to pursue baseball and basketball in high school, only getting his passion reignited for drawing manga upon seeing the Akira anime film poster. And when comparing Kishimoto's work to the artists of Akira, Katsuhiro Otomo, you can see some similarities in their art styles, especially when it comes to the eyes, ears, and hands, as he's mentioned how he wished to imitate such a style before. But as mentioned,
shit,
there's
true, brother.
nothing significant that I would say is inherently bad about Kishimoto's art in this time period of early Naruto. It works wonders and I'm happy with it. However, little did I know just how much potential Kishimoto had in his art abilities as the manga continued publication, leading to what I consider the truest peak of Kishimoto's art. This time period of art for Kishimoto is without a doubt my favorite and just goes to show how truly talented of an artist he can be. It's a bit tricky to pinpoint the exact moment his art leapt in quality, as it's never going to be something that happens instantly from one chapter to the next.
Sure.
I would say around the middle of the
evolution.
search for Tsunade arc is where Kishimoto's art shows signs of changing, but it's not until the Sasuke retrieval arc to where we really get to see a significant amount of improvement in the way he approaches his penmanship. To give a quick side-by-side comparison before getting into anything too deep, on the left is a cover page Kishimoto drew for chapter 3, while on the right is a cover page he drew for chapter 185. Just by looking at
When did the anime start? Naruto 185. Chapter 185. That is 2003. When did the anime start? (2002). So I have a feeling this happens with a lot of mangaka. I have a feeling that his art style probably either was directly influenced by the anime or was like he was already either he was influenced by the anime or he was shifting in the direction of the anime anyway. I have a feeling like with Soul Eater, because this is very, very similar to Naruto's anime design. Kishimoto changed the art to fit with more of the anime. Okay, this was confirmed. Yeah, okay, makes sense.
Few pictures side by side, you can truly see how much confident Kishimoto is in the way he draws his characters. The pose feeling a lot more stronger, especially thanks to the more natural proportions that fit with the rest of the body, such as the feet. However, what I think works so well for Kishimoto is how much more experimental he becomes with his angles, as they further emphasize the emotions that the characters are giving off. Such as this shot of Naruto, as the viewpoint is deliberately drawn underneath the body so we're looking up at him, making us feel a lot more insignificant and puny compared to Naruto towering over us, as this choice in angle helps back up Naruto's words of how intimidating he is. The slight fisheye lens effect also helps add on to the demonic nature of Naruto's Nine Tails power, radiating an unnatural and troubling visual as his head has blocked out the sun along with the clouds circling around him ominously. This consistent use of brilliant angles greatly helped
Your Oda is fully anonymous.
Kishimoto's artwork move away from stiffer poses he had during the start of his publication, as it was pushing himself to understand his art form.
Kishimoto's done a number of public interviews.
He had during the start of his publication, as it was pushing himself to understand his art form better. Pulling off fisheye lens staging is an incredibly challenging and demanding task, as it's something that should only be attempted when you have a confident understanding of how you draw your characters and environments. Otherwise, it just isn't going to look quite right. And I think this goes to show how truly in his element Kishimoto was with his artwork during this time period of Naruto. He was truly dedicated to bringing out the best of his artistic capabilities, as he would even go as far as redrawing pages that he wasn't happy with, such as this page with Kidomaru preparing what is supposed to be a death blow against Neji. According to Kishimoto, he originally got informed about potentially changing the artwork above due to his twin brother, who's also a mangaka, who had called it uncool and boring. And when looking at brother, who's also a originally got informed about potentially changing the artwork above due to his twin brother, who's also a mangaka, who had called it uncool and
Sorry, what? What did his brother do? Seishi Kishimoto. Okay, nothing that's really been like that popular. Okay, that explains why you look at Kishimoto, you only get that one. He's got a current manga going called Kamiyashiro Jiko Satsunoke. This started earlier this year. What is this? Mao. Oh, Jisatsu? Can't even fucking find the Mao page for it. Kamiyashiro. Where is it? No, not Yushaki. Why is Yushaki? That's no, that's not what I looked up.
Boring. And
Yeah, I
when
didn't know
looking
about
at
that.
the art that's been displayed here, while it looks fine and gets the message across of what's happening, it could definitely use a number of improvements to not only make things look more interesting, but to also express a lot more emotion, considering how impactful of a moment this scene is supposed to be. This is supposed to be Kidomaru's powered up attack that he believes is going to deliver the final death blow to Neji, yet it doesn't feel that way at all. It just feels like another ordinary attack, with the only difference being Kidomaru's appearance. The angle doesn't help either, as it only adds on to how underwhelming of a moment this is, as it's a fairly standard shot that leaves a lot of unused open room, resulting in a very flat looking environment that doesn't complement the character that takes center stage. This is a
Without the
double
text,
page
you wouldn't even
spread
know this
as
is a kill
well,
shot.
and from the way everything is drawn, it really feels like it isn't deserving of one and could have just been used for a singular page due to the lack of energy this moment carries. Now let's take a look at how Kishimoto redrew this double page spread after realizing what could have been improved. As you can clearly see, this
that's
is
way better.
100 times better compared to his previous work. Instead of Kidomaru just using his two arms to prepare the bow and arrow like in the earlier artwork, he's now using every single limb on his body, which truly emphasizes how much more powerful and devastating of an attack this is going to be. There's no waste here, as everything is being put to use, and that's the same for the environment. Instead of the trees just being used as just a backdrop, they're now incorporating
Also cutting out some of the build-up panels that just did not need to be there.
into the main attraction of the image due to Kidomaru's strings being tied to the scenery, literally making the whole image tie perfectly into one complete package. The much more interesting choice of angle also helps create a better understanding of the charge up for Kidomaru's attack, as the top half of his body is a lot smaller, such as his arms, compared to the bottom half, such as his feet, creating a dynamic, powerful posture. The panel to the top left also reinstates the sheer power that has been delivered compared to what Kishimoto
Yeah, it's not
had
spread
done
across
before,
multiple
having a shot
panels
that
now
focuses on a harsh expression filled with veins popping out. And for a final side note, I think it's a really great touch how the sound effect letters travel along the direction of the bow, as it makes the camera angle feel like it's warped slightly at a curved angle. As said, Kishimoto was 100% in his element when it came to showing his true potential as a mangaka, as there's so many beautiful pieces of artwork that can be framed in a museum purely based on how stunning they look. This is especially the case for his double page spreads, as they're always packed to
That's
the
a
brim
shot.
with gorgeous visuals that you can't help but get lost looking at. And while I have my praises for the upgraded direction Kishimoto went in with his art, there was one comment from Kishimoto that grabbed my attention. Due to the anime being incredibly popular, he believed having his manga have the same art style that the anime was going for would help create a better segue for fans that wanted to check out the manga, as having a different style would be off-putting.
Sure.
And upon reading this, I couldn't help but feel slightly disappointed. Don't get me wrong, this direction Kishimoto
This
took
is a
for his
really
artwork
common thing that
clearly
happens.
worked for me anyway, as I consider it to be my favorite time period of his art. It's just, you can't help but think it could have been something much better. Due to wanting his art to look like the anime, he's already made a restriction for himself that doesn't allow him to explore new territory with his art. And while before I did explain how he had partially done this through the use of camera angles, this is still something that could be pulled off by the anime. I think one of the best things about manga is getting away with things that can't always be replicated by the anime adaptation. It's one of the many reasons why I love the My Hero Academia manga in comparison to the anime, as it's filled to the brim with dynamic, exaggerated expressions that you're rarely going to see replicated to such quality in animated formats. And sure, while the My Hero Academia manga has always been more expressive than Naruto, you can't help but wonder there was possibly an extra element Kishimoto could have pursued for his manga. And as said before, I am perfectly happy with how his art direction has turned out. It's just something you can't help but imagine how things could have been different. So who knows, maybe it's something that would have turned out for the worst and not necessarily the best. Either way, it's an interesting conversation to bring up. So overall, as stated many times, I love this period of art from Kishimoto. He improved on numerous
This makes it
elements
sound like
of
you
his
don't love
previous
the rest
art
of it.
style, which resulted in some of his strongest work being shown off here. I have very little complaints, as you could probably tell. And now I think it's about time we move on to the final stage of evolution Kishimoto took with Naruto's art style, as eventually the strain of being a manga artist gets unfortunately pushed up to the forefront more than ever. Before I dive into this next section fully, I think it's best we understand the area in the story where Kishimoto's art starts to change. As like his early work, it's a slow transition and nothing is sudden, but for this case, it's a much slower change. I'd say around the Akatsuki suppression arc is when the quality of Kishimoto's peak art slowly starts to change, as characters don't feel as refined as they used to be, but starting to look like they're drawn at a faster and more sketchy rate. And it's not something that is completely apparent straight away, but something you can slowly see surfacing the more you read on, especially with character faces. And so to judge an exact cutoff point would be borderline impossible. So I'm going to start with the arc where it became the most visible, that being the war arc. Unfortunately, this is the
Everything comes back to the fucking war arc.
Weakest period of art for Kishimoto. And look, while what I'm saying may sound harsh, all I said is that it's the weakest, not that it's horrible. Kishimoto really set the bar high with what he was delivering previously, and of course, being a manga artist for 15 years straight will eventually start to weigh down on you, as it's natural that such a demanding schedule was finally starting to affect Kishimoto's work.
You want to talk about starting to weigh down on you? Go read. There are forum posts from 2008 complaining about One Piece, complaining about the story feeling like it's just redoing the same thing over and over and over again. Now, this was around like Water 7, right? This is what a lot of people now consider to be some of the best parts of One Piece. But this is something that's sort of come back more recently with a lot of the arcs in One Piece now just kind of feeling very similar. Bleach manga went through this as well. Yeah, pretty much any long-running weekly mangas you can go through it. There's a reason why JoJo is a monthly manga now. There's a reason why after Stone Ocean? Yeah, I think Stone Ocean was the last time it was in Weekly Jump. After that point, everything else is monthly.
If you read weekly manga that has been publishing for years upon years, you'll understand how this isn't something that is unique to Naruto. The same happened with Kubo's failing health for Bleach, as well as Togashi's insane body pains with Hunter x Hunter. And as stated earlier, I'm not saying the art that gets produced towards the end point of these series are bad, not by any means. It's far from the truth.
Well, if you want to talk about Hunter x Hunter, yes. No, some of the art in Hunter x Hunter actually was legitimately bad. Yes, it's a health issue, absolutely. But let's not pretend that Hunter x Hunter didn't have really bad art. You know, like this one. Now, a lot of these ones did get redrawn at some point. But some of these shots, man. Here we go. Here's one. Some of these shots, there's no debate about whether or not they're good.
I think it's just important to acknowledge that dip in quality is there and is still worth briefly discussing, especially when in majority of these circumstances, the author isn't to blame, but the industry itself.
It's
but
health
manga
issues,
such
absolutely.
as Bleach and Hunter x Hunter can be saved for another day, so before I go too off topic, let's get back to Naruto, as I feel like I've explained enough how this situation with artwork isn't something that uncommon. In a strange way, I feel like Kishimoto's artwork slightly resembles his early art, as he moves back to focusing on more blockier designs. I mentioned slightly resembles.
Why does it look like there's a heart on here? This bit right here.
his early art as he moves back to focusing on more blockier designs. I mentioned this at the start, but I believe the reason why this look is a lot more present is because of how the character designs take on a rather quick and sketchy look. The art isn't as refined as the previous period of artwork we discussed, but this can sometimes be very beneficial to the more intense moments showcased in the war arc, such as the pool of dead bodies and blood from the aftermath of Obito's carnage. The sketchy tones of Kishimoto's art style really helping develop a grittier look for this scene to make it appear all the more violent and chilling. Or even the moment where Sasuke announces his true intentions to the world, making this panel look all the more dramatic thanks to the harsh and excessive use of rough shading Kishimoto has used for Sasuke's face, especially around the eyes and nose thanks to his cross-hatching technique. It's just slightly unfortunate that when it comes to the average drawing, poses can tend to feel slightly stiff and a bit awkward as due to how blocky in design some of the characters can look. Facial expressions also suffer from similar problems as they only do the bare minimum in conveying emotion as they desperately need more energy behind them to pack a greater punch to successfully match the dialogue on paper. However, Kishimoto has demonstrated numerous times that this is something he can pull off. It's just a shame this has a habit of appearing much more frequently. But by far the biggest criticism and problem I have with this period of art in Naruto is the backgrounds. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that I haven't really been discussing anything too deep regarding backgrounds, and that's because it's a fairly tricky process. Like any other manga artist, Kishimoto has assistants that help him with parts of his manga, and this is most apparent with areas such as backgrounds. I don't know who did what, so it's incredibly hard for me to assume whether Kishimoto was as involved with the backgrounds as he was with the characters. At best, I can only guess he was involved with the basic structure of what it might look like for his assistants to build upon. But either way, I am not a fan of these backgrounds. The war arc is filled with really boring and generic scenery of just, well, rocks and a black night sky. And it all just ends up clashing against the characters in the forefront, which makes things look...
It's like really... It makes sense for what's going on, but it is like a lot of shit going on.
Really messy and not pleasing to the eye at all. A thing that doesn't help is how much more reliant Kishimoto has been in terms of adding more lines of shades onto his characters. While in the past I praised him for not being overly excessive in this department, here it's almost completely thrown out the window as a lot of the characters are just covered in them when it's really not needed. And to make it worse, the backgrounds are also littered with the same style of shading, which, as I said before, clashes with the characters and just doesn't make things look all that appealing. And that's not to say all the backgrounds aren't great. The war arc has produced some of the most beautiful looking artwork to come out of the series. It's just when it's not a double or full page spread, the weaker side of his art style becomes more prevalent. Unfortunately, the war arc is filled with a lot more weaker displays of Kishimoto's art that never appeared as frequently compared to his earlier work. It's not an issue of an artist who lacks understanding of how to create more appealing and impactful visuals, because as shown...
Again, this is what I was saying before about Araki and JoJo, right? Somehow he managed to keep it up. But like, I don't... There comes a point where the weekly manga grind is eventually going to eat you. Like, you're gonna have to make some... Somehow Oda has managed to make it work, but I think part of that is also just like nothing fucking happens in One Piece. So you can kind of like... You can kind of get away with it. Part of that is the weekly grind. But there are very few long-running series that have, especially if they have simple art, you can get away with it longer. But eventually it's gonna come back and bite you.
It's clearly something he can do, but instead an issue of a struggling manga artist who was trying desperately to keep up with the schedule of producing a weekly manga, until eventually it all caught up. Now, I don't want to end things on a sour note of me being slightly negative of Kishimoto's art. I still believe he is an incredible artist that can pull off absolutely stunning pieces of artwork with no problem at all. The art he produced during the war arc isn't something I would consider bad either. It's just since he's displayed better artwork previously, certain elements start to become more noticeable. What needs to be noted and shared is how loss in quality is an unfortunate normal thing for manga artists that have the tight deadline of releasing a near enough 20-page chapter every single week. It's a ruthlessly demanding environment that works creators to blood, sweat, and tears. And sadly, this has just become the everyday norm that doesn't show signs of improvement. And so, with knowing all of this, I'm always going to remain impressed with how artists such as Kishimoto lived and prevailed through this crazy work cycle for so many years. Sure, I have my issues with certain aspects of Kishimoto's art during the later half, but that's not something to describe discredit him for as an artist. He's delivered some of the most eye-catching panels in manga that will forever cement itself within my brain, and because of that, I'm happy. I'm happy I got to witness the story of Naruto through Kishimoto's artistic interpretation, as it's something I'm always going to be grateful for. And with that being said, I hope this video has done its purpose in showing you the evolution of art in Naruto. So that's it for this video. This is by far one of the biggest videos I've made, so I really do hope it was worth it.
I think it was a good video.
I've always
I enjoyed
loved
this.
Kishimoto's art, and so I really wanted to make a video dedicated to talking about the changes it went through. And hey,
I might check it out,
you
yeah.
disagreed
Not today,
with a lot
obviously.
of the things I said. Maybe your favorite section of art from Kishimoto is during the war arc, and my response to that is great. As mentioned at the start of the video, art is always going to be a subjective topic,
Maybe
so
off
maybe
stream,
you
maybe I'll
saw
do
a
that. I
few
don't know,
things
we'll see.
differently compared to how I interpreted it, and all the power to you.
Oh,
As you shouldn't
okay,
let
is it like an
someone else
hour-long
ruin
video?
what you enjoy. So besides that, if you liked anything I've talked about in regards to this discussion of the art in Naruto, then please give the video a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you can get notified when I drop my next video. It's for free and it lets me know you're enjoying my content, so if you're at least a slight
47?
bit
Maybe,
interested, you might as well
we'll
stick
see.
along for
We'll
the
see what
ride.
else we have next
As
week.
well, do follow me over on my Twitter account at MikeyUbi. It's the place where I'm most active, so if you want to message me over there or just see what I'm up to, then feel free to check it out. And also, do comment below if there's anything you'd like to talk about, whether it's to do with the artwork in Naruto or manga and anime in general. Whatever the discussion is, I'll make sure to check it out. Do also let me know if there's any other series that
Well, that was fun. That was fun. We ran a bit over the normal stream end time. But it is what it is. It is what it is. So I'm going to bounce off for today. Oh my god. Get some food and yeah.